Would you sit in a barber's chair if you weren't allowed to look in the mirror, even once? No reflection, no confirmation, just the sound of clippers near your ears and a stranger standing behind you. Because I did. And now every night, something comes for me. There's a barbershop in a small town somewhere in the Midwest that's unlike any other. It's always fully booked. The haircuts are perfect, but no one ever goes back. Strange things happen inside, and no one talks about it. I had to see it for myself. What I found there will haunt me forever. I moved to a small town after school. I needed a change, something quieter, something slower. The city I left behind was loud, crowded, always demanding something from you. I told myself I just needed space to think, to breathe, to figure things out. A fresh start. That's what I called it. I found a small place on the edge of town, nothing special, just enough to get by while I looked for a decent job. The days were uneventful at first. Unfamiliar streets, unfamiliar faces. People kept to themselves. Conversations were short, polite, and distant. It felt like a place where nothing really happened, and maybe that's why I stayed. After a few weeks of settling in, I started to feel restless. The quiet that once felt peaceful began to feel heavy, like the town was too still, too empty. So one evening, just before night fully settled in, I decided to take a walk. Nothing serious, just something to clear my head and ease my body after another long, uneventful day. The air was cool, the kind that brushes against your skin just enough to wake your senses. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional car passing by, headlights stretching across the road before disappearing again. It felt normal, at least at first. I didn't follow any particular path. I just walked, turned corners without thinking, let my feet decide where to go. And the deeper I went, the quieter it became. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. The kind that makes every small sound stand out just a little too much. The street was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Dim streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks. A faint fog hung low, curling around the corners of closed shops. Trash rustled in the wind, but no one else was around. The air smelled faintly of old wood and something metallic, like iron or blood. Every step toward the barber shop made the silence feel heavier, as if the street itself was holding its breath. At the end of the street stood the barber shop, its windows dark and reflective. The neon barber sign buzzed softly, flickering on and off, casting brief red and blue flashes across the cracked pavement. The paint on the walls was chipped and peeling, but the door looked polished, almost new, as if inviting you in. A faint hum of electric clippers drifted out whenever the door creaked, though no one could be seen inside. There was something off, something that made you glance away, yet somehow, you couldn't stop looking. The barber never lets customers look in the mirror while he cuts their hair. And yet, every haircut comes out perfect. He never works outside, never takes appointments elsewhere. Everyone leaves satisfied, but everyone leaves changed. I couldn't resist. I went there, sat in the chair, and let him work. The haircut was perfect. Everything seemed normal. I went home feeling fine. But that night, everything changed. I woke up suddenly. There was a dark shadow at my window, holding a pair of clippers. It felt real, and yet dreamlike. I couldn't move. My heart raced. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I felt it calling me back to that chair. At first, I thought it was just fear lingering in my mind, a memory refusing to fade. But fear doesn't learn. Fear doesn't adapt. And whatever followed me home, it was learning. The third night was when it changed. I woke up before the sound started. That had never happened before. My eyes opened suddenly, like something inside me knew it was already there. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No hum. No movement. Just silence that felt stretched thin. And then I noticed something that made my chest tighten slowly. The mirror across my room was facing me. I never leave it that way. I try not to look at it. Something in me knew that if I did, I wouldn't like what I saw. But the longer I avoided it, the stronger the pull became. My eyes kept drifting back, inch by inch, until I finally gave in. And when I looked, I saw my room exactly as it was. My bed, my door, the window, everything was in place. Except, I wasn't there. The bed was empty in the reflection, completely empty. But I could feel myself lying there, breathing, unable to move. That's when the sound started again. Not in the room this time, but inside the mirror. The clippers were louder than ever. Sharp, clear, close. And then something moved behind the empty bed, inside the reflection. A shape, stepping forward slowly, holding the clippers. I tried to turn my head away, but my body refused. I was forced to watch as it came closer, stopping exactly where my body should have been. And then it raised its hand, slowly, deliberately, and brought the clippers up, right to where my head would have been in that reflection. That was the first time I felt it touch me. Not physically, but something deeper, like a pressure against my thoughts. A pull. And suddenly, memories started slipping again. Faster this time. Larger pieces. I struggled to hold on to them, to anchor myself, but they kept fading, like something was taking them one by one. And just before I lost consciousness, I heard something I hadn't heard before. Breathing. Not mine. The next morning, I couldn't remember what I had for dinner the night before. I couldn't remember who I had spoken to, but I still remembered the shop. Perfectly. Every detail untouched. That's when I stopped trying to forget, because something inside me knew, if I let go of that memory, I might lose more than just the shop. Days started blending into each other. Sleep became something I avoided, but it didn't matter. It would come eventually, and every time it did, it would be waiting. Sometimes in the corner of the room, sometimes by the door, sometimes closer than I was ready for. And each time, it didn't rush. It didn't attack. It just continued, like it had a process, like it was finishing something it had already started. I started documenting everything, writing down what I could still remember, recording my voice in case my mind slipped further. But even that began to fail. I'd wake up and find pages missing, recordings cut short, files corrupted, not deleted, just incomplete, like something was interrupting the process halfway through. Then one night, I didn't wake up in my room. I was sitting in the chair again. The barbershop. Everything exactly the same. The dim light. The smell. The mirror I couldn't see myself in. But this time, I was aware. Fully aware. And I could move. I tried to stand up immediately, but something stopped me. Not physically, but mentally. The same calm from before settled over me, forcing me to stay seated. And then I heard footsteps behind me. The barber. Closer than ever before. The cloth wrapped around me again, tighter this time. He didn't rush. Every movement slow, controlled, almost careful. And when the clippers turned on, they sounded different. Louder, sharper, like they were closer than they should have been. I forced myself to look at the mirror. And this time, I saw something. Not my reflection, but someone else's. For a brief second, the mirror showed a face that wasn't mine. Someone sitting in the chair before me. Their eyes wide. Their expression frozen in fear. And then it changed again, showing another face. And another. Each one appearing for just a second before disappearing. Dozens of them. Maybe more. All different. All trapped in that same position. And then it stopped on one. Mine. But not as I was. Older. Tired. Eyes empty. The clippers got louder. And I felt something fall. A piece of me. Not physical. Something else. Something I couldn't define, but knew I had just lost. I woke up gasping, back in my room. But the feeling didn't leave. That emptiness stayed. And from that night on, things got worse. The figure doesn't always wait anymore. Sometimes I see it before I fall asleep. Standing in the corner, completely still. Watching. Other times, I hear the clippers during the day. In crowded places. In silence. Even when I cover my ears, it doesn't stop. And then there are the reflections. They don't match me anymore. Sometimes they move a second too late. Sometimes they don't move at all. And sometimes they move when I don't. I've seen it raise its hand before I do. I've seen it turn its head when mine is still. And once, I saw it smile. I didn't. I tried to go back to where I first found the shop. I needed answers. Needed to see if it was still there. But the street didn't exist anymore. Not in any way I could find. Maps showed something different. Buildings that didn't match. Roads that ended where they shouldn't. It was like the place had been erased. Or moved. But something else happened while I was searching. I met someone. He didn't approach me directly. Just sat near me in a quiet place, watching. And after a while, he asked me a question that made my chest tighten immediately. Do you remember the mirror? I didn't answer right away. He nodded slowly, like he already knew. I went there too, he said. A long time ago. I asked him what he remembered. He stayed quiet for a moment before answering. Nothing, he said. Not the place. Not the barber. Not even why I went. That didn't make sense. You just asked me about the mirror. He looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw fear. I don't remember it, he said slowly. But I know I should. That was the last thing he said before he stood up and left. I never saw him again. But that conversation stayed with me, because it confirmed something I had been trying to ignore. Forgetting isn't natural. It's part of it. And remembering is what keeps it alive. Now, when I sleep, I don't always wake up where I expect to. Sometimes it's the chair. Sometimes it's just darkness with that sound echoing around me. And sometimes it's something else. A space that feels unfinished. Like the shop exists there in pieces, waiting to be put together. And each time I return, the barber is closer. Clearer. More defined. I still can't see his face. But I can feel his eyes on me now. And the clippers, they don't just hum anymore. They're waiting. If you're listening to this, really listening, pay attention to what you remember after it ends. The details, the images, the feeling. Because if it stays with you too clearly, if you find yourself thinking about that chair, that mirror, that sound, then it might already know you. And once it does, it doesn't stop. It just waits until you sit down again. If you survive this story, remember, some places shouldn't exist and some memories never let go. Comment below if you felt the chills, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because the shadows are always watching, and the next story might be closer than you think.